So first, I just want to say welcome to everybody. Uh, Welcome to the Divine Mercy University Spiritual Direction Certificate presentation. Just to introduce myself, my name is Greg Shapiro. I am the admissions advisor here at DMU for the SDC Spiritual Direction Certificate program. Just to give a little bit more of my background, I've been working in admissions for almost 6.5 years now. I wasn't always at Divine Mercy University, but I came here just because I really value the mission. And previously I was the advisor for the Master's in Psychology program. And not too long ago, I switched over to spiritual direction, which I've really enjoyed. I love talking about the subject. I love working with all of the students that have been involved in it. And so this has really been just a joy being involved with. Around 10:30, we're going to actually be joined by Maria Brackett. She's a faculty member here. She's the program director for SDC, and she'll be here to engage in the Q&A, so to answer your questions. So just to give you an update, if any questions come up as we're going through the information, feel free to drop it in the Q&A section or the chat section, and we'll be sure to cover all of those things by the end. So without further ado, let's get started. And here's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be covering who we are as a university. So again, our history, our mission, that sort of thing. We'll talk about what is spiritual direction, and who spiritual direction is for, who's really called toward this program and this ministry. We'll go into the ins and outs of the SDC program, so what to expect, the different courses, that sort of thing. And then we'll go into the time frame and the cost and tuition. So starting with our mission, I'll just read aloud and chime in between. So Divine Mercy University is an institution of higher education offering graduate degrees, continuing education, and certificate programs globally. So we have students all over the world that are active here at DMU currently. The university is dedicated to the renewal of the Catholic Christian intellectual tradition and the integration of the theoretical and empirical basis of psychology, professional counseling, and related fields with a Catholic Christian view of the human person through teaching and learning both knowledge and critical thinking, critical skills. So in other words, the whole purpose of Divine Mercy is integrating psychology with 2,000 years of church teaching on human dignity. That's why we exist. It's a void that's been needing to be filled in the psychology industry, but we apply it within within spiritual direction as well. It's something that makes the SDC program here unique from other spiritual direction programs at other universities. The university provides students with an appropriate academic and educational environment that supports the integration of science, scholarship, and a Catholic Christian understanding of the person through a rigorous, critical, and objective search for truth. Again, it's really our bread and butter, just that integrative understanding of the human mind while also acknowledging the person as being made in the image and likeness of God. And this is something that carries across all of the programs we offer. So if you see the red box on the side where it says spiritual direction, the Master's in Psychology program, our PsyD in clinical psychology program, and then our Master's in Counseling program. What all of these programs have in common is that same mission of acknowledging and recognizing the human mind, but also just looking at the person holistically as being made in God's image. So let's carry on to the next one and sharing our accreditation. We are institutionally accredited through the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. So this is one of the 7 major accrediting bodies. This, in other words, means that we hold to a high standard of education. And we're also approved to operate by SCHEV, and that's the State Council of Higher Education in Virginia. And then also, you're going to see at the top a programmatic accreditation, which is the American Psychological Association. Now, this program, or maybe I should say, this accreditation only applies to a doctoral level, which is why it's in brackets, you're showing PsyD. But I still like to use this accreditation here in the presentation because we still use the APA writing style in this program. So this is something that as a student, you'll be active in as far as how you're writing your assignments. So next, what is spiritual direction? So the first thing, it's accompaniment. It's assisting people on their path to the Lord. And it's the act of being there for them in service both to them and the Lord. And it's also deep listening to the directee to help them deepen in their experience of the Lord and his narrative in their lives. So for many of you, for instance, you have gone through spiritual direction, or rather you might be going through spiritual direction currently, which is excellent. And as you've been doing it, your spiritual director has been walking with you as you've been growing closer to God in your faith life. And that's really the main purpose of it. It's acknowledging the individual where they are in their faith life and trying to get them closer and closer toward God. So that's the other thing. It's a pilgrimage toward God. That's the whole point of it. And that's the clear goal of spiritual direction. What it's not, and it might resemble it, but it's not therapy. Therapy is a different sort of, if we want to call it ministry or vocation, but spiritual direction wouldn't be the same. They might have similarities where you're speaking one-on-one with an individual, but rather spiritual direction is more of that clear goal of walking with that individual toward God rather than trying to have them sort out maybe their trauma and crisis. Another thing is that it's formation and mission. So just like how Jesus summons, he forms and sends forth, that's what spiritual direction is. So take yourselves as an example. At one point, you've been called by God to grow in your faith and seek out spiritual direction. And as you've been going through spiritual direction, your faith has been growing and forming. And now you're answering the call to become spiritual directors. And that's really what this is. And for many of you that are going to become spiritual directors, you'll have that same opportunity to help those that are trying to grow in their faith and growing closer to God. And they themselves, many of them, may also hear the calling to become spiritual directors themselves. So it really does continue to grow. So why is spiritual direction such an important ministry? Many of you already have a clear understanding of why that is, but I always like to share this. So offering the service of deep listening to another is very useful. Many times we need some guidance in trying to wrap our heads around our faith because it could be such a mystery sometimes. Accompanying our sisters and brothers in the faith to help strengthen their faith, hope, and love. So offering that clarity to grow in the theological virtues is very important. It's something that we all need, and spiritual direction is there to help them with that. Guiding another to find the Lord in every situation of life. So whether it's through a very difficult circumstance or even mundane circumstances where it's the everyday life, but having the ability and helping people learn how to actually find God in all of these scenarios is something that's very important. A way that others may discover their call to be a spiritual director. So just as I had mentioned earlier, many of you have been going through spiritual direction, and then you've heard the calling to become spiritual directors, and that's something that will continue on. And then lastly, giving spiritual direction as a help also for the director to grow in his or her relationship with God. It's just one of those sort of it's like the gift that keeps on giving, that as you're active in it and as you're not just in the program, but in the ministry itself, you grow in your own faith. It's one of those benefits of it. Another benefit that I'll share, I spoke with a student a while back. She was here for one of our residencies, and I asked her what sort of benefits she experienced that she didn't even expect. And one thing that she had mentioned was her relationship with her own spiritual director had changed for the better, because having a clearer idea of how spiritual direction works and maybe the questions that are commonly brought up, it gave her a better idea of how to communicate with her own spiritual director. And it's allowed her to grow even further in her faith. So this is one of the other benefits that many times we forget about, but is very, just very helpful as they've been getting a clear idea of what spiritual direction is. Oh, there we go. So what to expect in the SDC program? So the first thing is that this program, all of the courses are done online. And not only that, they're also done asynchronously. So in other words, instead of having to log in at noon or 3 o'clock or whatever time, it's up to you when you want to log into your classes and participate in the discussion boards. So this gives you a lot of flexibility. So your discussions will be done through like online forums, basically, and your lectures will be pre-recorded. It'll be up to you when you want to sit down and read your assignments and sit down and do your written assignments. So again, this gives a lot more flexibility to those, especially those that are working full-time or have busy home lives or busy ministry lives. The other thing is there are 6 courses in the program in total. And it's done primarily online, but there are a couple of face-to-face components. So one of the face-to-face components would be the 2 4-day residencies, and we'll dive a little bit more into that, but there are 2 residencies in the program that happen here on campus. And then there are also 60 practicum hours that you'll be engaged in. Now your practicum hours, that will be done locally to you, so you won't have to travel for that. You can do that as locally to you as you want it to be. But this would mean actually putting into practice all of the skills and knowledge that you're learning. So here are the 6 courses that you'll be taking. So the first one, SDC 100, that's going to be ongoing conversation, deepening discipleship, and the foundations of spiritual direction. The second course will be SDC 200, human development for spiritual direction. The third one will be relating skills for spiritual direction. And then this is also your second residency is built into this third course. And so your residency will take place during week 7 of SDC 300. Your fourth course will be discernment and spiritual growth, theory and practice. And then the 5th course will be advanced spiritual direction skills and practicum, putting out into the deep. And so 2 things will happen during this course. One is your second residency that will happen during week 2. And that residency is more of a launch into your practicum. So that's the other thing that will happen. You're going to begin your 60 practicum hours during your 5th course. And then the last course that you'll be taking will be advanced prayer and situations. So let's talk about the residencies. So the residencies, as I mentioned, they happen twice in the entire program. And the first residency won't happen until about 10 months in from when you begin. So there's actually a lot of time between when you start and when your first residency will happen. And these will happen, again, here in Sterling, Virginia. So we're about 45 minutes outside of DC. And it's about a 5-minute drive from the Dulles Airport. So if you're flying in, you're not going to have to travel very far between the airport and the campus. Students are lodged in a nearby hotel. I think it's a Hilton. It's walking distance. It's very close. So everything will be very local. It won't be complicated. But the whole point of the residencies is for you to polish up on your skills and knowledge that you're learning in the program. So it's a way for you to, in a simulated environment, put into practice everything that you've been learning so that before you go into your practicum and before you're active as a spiritual director, you'll be able to practice these skills. So again, the first residency will happen during week 7 of your 3rd term. And then your second residency will happen during week 2 of your 5th term. And again, that second residency is going to launch your practicum. So I hope you have more questions. Again, if any questions are coming up, feel free to put them in the chat in the Q&A section, and we will cover that. So the next thing, this program is term-based. Sometimes the words term and semester are used interchangeably, but in all practicality, they're pretty different. So a semester is usually made up of 16 weeks, whereas a term is going to be made up of 8 weeks. So you're taking one course per 8-week term. And then usually every student is different. Some are faster readers, some like to take their time absorbing their information, but just based on a pattern that we've seen with our students, they're usually putting in somewhere between 6 to 9 hours per week of committing toward everything related to the program. So one thing that I always encourage students is to look at your own schedule and think if there's any room in there for you to commit. Just being more on the conservative side, if you can commit 9 hours per week, then this means that you have the time to commit toward the program. And then along with that, I mentioned that you're taking one course per 8-week term, but there are also breaks between the terms that you're taking. So there are roughly 9 to 10 week breaks between each course. So there's a lot of breathing room, and many students will take those times off to maybe reread the information that they've been learning just because they want to get another sort of look at everything that they've been gathering. Sometimes they'll just take a full break and take a step back, and that's actually the best way for them to approach the next term. So it's up to you. You know yourself as a learner, and you'll certainly have that freedom. And this is also a great time for students to, if they're going to schedule time for travel or certain events, usually they are reserving those times off to do that. But one of the other benefits of having these breaks is that because students are paying as they go, it's a course by course payment plan. They usually use these breaks to replenish their funds just to make this even more affordable. And then in total for the whole program and including these breaks, it would be completed in 2 years. So let's talk about the cost. And I'll also share very briefly that there is a way to reduce the cost too. So I'll just bring that up as a disclaimer. But the cost per course before any sort of reduction is $778. And then the cost for the residencies, each residency is $1,000. And that $1,000, that's going to cover your lodging, it's going to cover most of your meals, it's going to cover your materials. So the only thing that you, the student, would be responsible for would be 3 of your dinners, and then also your travel. So that's something that you would be responsible for, but that $1,000 is going to cover everything else. So with that, I had mentioned that there is an opportunity to bring the costs down. And so one way of doing this, we can bring the cost per course down by 10%. So if you are a consecrated religious, if you are a volunteer at your parish, or you are an employee with the diocese or your parish, or even a church-affiliated nonprofit, or whatever it may be, this would actually make you eligible to receive a 10% tuition reduction. So if you have any questions to see if you are eligible, let me know. I'd be happy to have that conversation for you, and we can dive a little bit further and figure out what the full amount would be for you. So that brings us to the end. I believe that Maria Brackett will be joining us in a few if she hasn't hopped in yet. But this is my contact information. Feel free to screenshot it because I'd love to answer any questions that you have directly from me. So my email is here, my telephone number is here. So you're welcome to call or text me. Either one would be fine. So another thing I want to highlight for you is that we've actually just started opening up our application process for the spring semester, and that's going to start on January 11th. And so if you were interested in completing an application form, it's on our website. And there's a little red box in front. Usually the application form is $25, but if you put the code in SDC that's going to waive the fee for you. It'll be a free application. So again, feel free to screenshot that or write that down. If you're interested in completing an application form, then put that code in and it will waive the fee for you. So with that said, I know that we're gonna keep an eye out for Maria as she's coming in, but I know that there are some questions here. So feel free to gather your questions together. I will be here to answer those. And thank you, Natalia, for sharing the application. So it's on our chat. So if you were interested in taking a look at what the application process looks like. I'll answer one question. I know that you're all gathering your thoughts right now. One common question that I do ask is it required that you're Catholic? And the answer to that's no, it's not required that you're Catholic. We do approach spiritual direction from the Catholic tradition, but we have a lot of different types of Christians that are involved in this program. So we have many Catholics. We also have non-denominational. We have Episcopalian. Really, we open up. We're always welcoming many different types of denominations into this program because we all have this love for God in common and also a love for our neighbor to help them grow in their faith. So let's see, we have another question. Do we also use FAFSA for the courses? Edson, that's a great question. So FAFSA is actually not going to be part of this program. Usually when it comes to financial aid, that would be applied to a degree-based program. And so in this case, instead of using financial aid, students are paying out of pocket. It's a pay-as-you-go. So you're paying course by course. And I do know that, what's the word I'm looking for? Private loans could be available to you. So if you're interested in taking out loans, that could be an option. But federal aid would be applied to a degree-based program. So Maria just jumped on. Maria, welcome. If you would like to briefly introduce yourself, and also Maria will be here to answer your questions.
Thank you so much, Greg. I had wished I could be here the whole time, but I was in that class in a supervision session with some of our students. So thank you. My name is Maria Brackett. I'm the director of the Spiritual Direction Certificate here at the university. So my job is really to direct the program and the faculty and just make sure that the students are having a great experience and really achieving the goals of the program and their own personal goals as they go through the certificate. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah. Well, Maria, I know that our guests are right now trying to come up with some questions, but I had answered one question that I commonly got, which is if it's required that students are Catholic in the program, and I had shared that it's not a requirement, that we really do welcome everybody that's enthusiastic about spiritual direction and wanting to serve God and others. But I will ask you, Maria, what's the most common question that you get as the program director and as faculty?
About the program itself, I get a lot of different questions from a lot of different people, but about the program itself, I would say probably the most common question is just kind of how the different aspects of it work, like how the practicum works and where they get supervision, because this is something not all spiritual direction programs have a practicum requirement, right? And some spiritual direction programs ask you to get supervision, but they don't really, it's not an integral part of the program. So that just how that kind of works is a very common question, and so the things that, I try to highlight in my answers about that is just that there is a practicum requirement to graduate from the program, which I think you probably already explained. And but we walk you through that practicum requirement, as would be in any university. You know, your program advisor can help you as you go through that practicum. The supervision you get is already within the program itself from your instructors. And if you have need for more supervision, we have the possibility for you to sign up for more supervision, or we have access to different instructors and faculty members that are there if you want some one-on-one supervision or different things like that. So we really try to offer you the resources to be able to meet the goals that you have personally, and also that we have in the program to help you to really train yourself as a spiritual director.
I'd also like to piggyback on what you shared about just helping people set up with their practicum. I had a great conversation with one of the architects of the program, Dr. Steve Grunman, and one thing that he had highlighted that was so useful for our students was many of them are curious, how do they find people to offer spiritual direction to? Are they expected to just figure it out on their own? And one of the things that he shared, and this might even be something that also makes us unique from other programs, is that this program really does train people on how to branch out to our students so that they can, or excuse me, it helps the students branch out to individuals so that they can work with them as a spiritual director. So this is, again, we make sure that we're covering all of our bases to have our students thriving in this ministry.
Exactly, Greg. You know, one of the things I appreciate about how this program is built is that there's these little goals that are happening all the time as you go through the program that are little by little helping you to meet the end goals of the program. So yeah, one of those is just getting to know people, entering into spiritual conversations with them, feeling comfortable there. And then the coaching about how to find spiritual directees and how to move into that type of relationship and how to set it up. And so, yeah, a lot of, all those kind of nitty gritty questions sometimes that need to be answered or that you need coaching on in order to be able to start to know how to do these things.
Yeah, good. So let's see, one thing maybe we can talk about very briefly as I'll give the guests in here a little bit more time to gather their questions. In the application process, I'll share very briefly is that as you're going through this, one of the steps is that you're also going to have a group interview, and it's not competitive where you and other applicants are competing against each other for a spot. But this is actually an opportunity for faculty members to learn a little bit more about you and your communication and listening skills. But Maria, if you could actually share a little bit, since you're one of the folks that sits in on these, you're one of the facilitators of these group interviews, would you be able to share a little bit about what applicants will expect when they enter into this process?
Sure, Greg. The group interview is an hour long. We really try to keep to that hour. And we really, it has a few different aspects of it, but the first part is just to kind of present you to the program a little bit better, give you more information about it. And then we break up into a dynamic where we're really asking each person in the interview to kind of lead a little bit of a conversation for us. And then we move into a time where they can ask any questions they'd like to ask. The whole environment of that group interview is to create a situation where we've got interpersonal relationships happening and conversations happening on an interpersonal level. Gives us a little bit of sense of just kind of the interpersonal intelligence of the people applying, since spiritual direction has so much to do with interpersonal relationships. But also, it also gives the applicants an opportunity just to get kind of a feel for what online learning is like and what like an online discussion might feel like, because we do have a lot of them in the program. And because there could be concerned people like, how can I really talk about spiritual direction or have these, maybe conversations that are more delicate or more intimate or over on an online platform. So I think that gives us a little bit of a taste of that in the interview about how to have a deep conversation on an online platform and a sharing. I'm always amazed that when the interview comes to an end, the applicants are always thanking me and the other faculty member that's there running the interview, but they always thank each other for the sharing and for the experience. And it's common that they say, it's been a joy to get to know you. What a gift. And so it's beautiful in that way too.
So it's almost like a taste of spiritual direction, just the interview process for our applicants.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. It's an experience, I think, where people feel seen and heard and a real interaction happening. And I think they appreciate that.
Great. Good. Well, let's see. We are 20 minutes before the hour. Maria, was there anything else that you'd like to share?
Well, Greg, I just finished the supervision session with some of our students that are in the last course. And so I'm just coming off of that. And I'm just, it just amazes me. And I'm so appreciative with the Lord of how the students help each other and how they really try to help the other to ask the questions that they need to be asking themselves. And so it's a real fraternal, a real beautiful community of learners that you experience as you go through the program, which could be interesting for people because they might think, how can that happen on online? But it definitely does. So that's just a beautiful experience and a real, a community of believers, a community of learners on this journey to learn more about this ministry and to prepare themselves for it if that's what the Lord is calling them to.
Yeah, that's one of the amazing parts of it. I think for a lot of people, especially those that are doing online learning for the first time, one of their concerns is, am I going to be a lone ranger through this whole process? How am I going to be able to do this without that same sort of support that you might get in person? And I've seen the opposite, where when I met with our cohorts for other residencies, they really had this tight-knit community. There's a lot of camaraderie within your cohort, and it's just one of the great benefits of how we sort of set this up for each student. So again, that support is there from your faculty to all of your fellow classmates. Good. All right. So I don't think it looks like we don't have any more questions right now, but again, these questions might come up much later. So feel free to save my contact information. Again, my email is gshapiro, Shapiro spelled with an E, at divinemercy.edu. And my phone number is listed there as 703-705-9118. You can call or text me. So I hope to speak with you one-on-one. And again, that code, that coupon code is there if you wanted to complete an application form, and we'll waive the fee for you. So with that said, thank you again so much, everybody, for joining us this morning. And I hope to speak with you soon. God bless.
So much. God bless you all. Bye.